Da, 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 we graduated high school and we shook some hands and we said goodbye to our teachers and said thanks for dealing with us for years. Now our parents are like, get a job and stop playing those dang video games.
We still had some heat. 2013 was not a slouch, but we were in a transition year because this is the year that the Xbox and the PS4 were coming out.
Yeah. They said, your guys are turning 18. Well, here's a new console generation for you. God. What year did you get the Xbone?
I got it the day it came out.
Oh, wow. Fucking day one edition, motherfucker.
I do. I
and
have
you don't even
controller.
He doesn't have the Xbox anymore, though.
No, I don't. One of the saddest things that I have in my house is the fact that I openly admitted to owning that console day one. I strapped it in my my passenger seat and everything. It was wonderful. I'm looking right now. I'm looking at our list because, again, there's a lot. We were saying how this year was, new console generation. And I'm looking here and there's some like Metro Last Light. I thought that came out in 2012. I guess it didn't. Came out in 2013. Yes. That doesn't seem right. Maybe it is.
What?
What?
Nothing else.
Maybe it was. I don't know. I'm like Papers, Please. I know that was a big game. That was a big indie game.
Yeah.
The Tomb Raider remake, Gone Home. Assassin's Creed 4 came out. That was big. Pirates are Pikmin 3. Whoa. The Wolf Among Us, XCOM Enemy Within, Battlefield 4. There's the first State of Decay, Dead Rising 3. Three. So a Stanley Parable. I say all those games, but this year was highlighted by 3 games that perfectly came out at like 3 good times to space out. One for the spring, one for the summer, and one for the end of the year. We started the year with BioShock, then we had The Last of Us, then we had Grand Theft Auto 5. These were the 3 games where, let's be honest, there were no other games that you would have as game of the year. These were the 3 games that every fucking person talked about. I remember watching, this was the year they were transitioning the video game awards to the web, and it was that GOTYcast with Joel McHale. And then Grand Theft Auto 5 won, and all of the team awkwardly was just in this like warehouse, and they just like, there was just background applause, and they won the game. And it was like, that shit was a time. That was a fun. Yeah. That was.
Look at it now.
Moment. My game of the year and my runner-up are 2 of these games. My runner-up.
Spoiler.
Yes. So my runner-up game is a game that Erik and I had on a list. He had on the list. I'm not going to say if it was our game of the year or not, but it was on the thing. Yes. And it is BioShock Infinite. This game was pretty freaking awesome, and I got the collector's edition, and I loved it. And
your brain
hurts. I'll say, in hindsight, it is a game that's upsetting because when we first got those teasers a few years before, it was like the way the game was being promoted looked so crazy, and then it got so like put down until it was what it was. Which, here's the thing, it was still great, and I think there's a lot of improvements over the first game, and there's still a lot about it that I love. And it introduced us to the world of Troy Baker. But
this was the year of Troy Baker playing acoustic guitars.
But ladies and gentlemen and non-binaries of all shapes and sizes, it's not the Troy Baker game. That is my game of the year. My game of the year is one of my favorite games of all time. We did a podcast about the show that they adapted, or them adapting it into a TV show, which was also fantastic. You should check that out. My father's in that video. Got him into the Last of Us world. The Last of Us. This is
They're doing
a game that
Fortnite.
This is a game that is, I thought you were going to be smart because I was like setting it up and I thought you were going to go, yeah, it is a game. This is a game that was hugely anticipated, not because of the first trailer, but because it was, again, a retcon thing like Arkham City, where the trailer came out and then everybody went and saw that in Uncharted 3, there was an Easter egg in a newspaper clipping about like a fungi that was taking over. And it was like a whole like Easter egg teaser for The Last of Us. The trailers came out. It looked so different from what Naughty Dog was doing. Again, it brought us back with Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson playing Ellie. So kind of going back to older actresses playing younger girls. It's not as weird because like Ellie's not like literally a fetus in this game. Like she's a little bit older than that. But that first teaser where they're in that building and they run through the hallway and he's aiming the gun behind him and it opens to the whole city. It was crazy. The soundtrack, all of it. And then the game finally comes out. And once again, it was one of those instances where I was like able to kind of sit back and be like, Sony, you son of a bitch. Naughty Dog. This is the second time Naughty Dog is involved in the game of the year for me. And this game, I really want to steal Nakey Jakey's review of it because his review of this game is perfect, where there's so many games where the gameplay and the mechanics are the fun parts. And then there's certain shit that's in video games we don't like tailing missions or like playing as a character you don't want to play as, where he says in this game, the crazy good stuff is the story and characters and the gameplay is secondary. And, you know, this game is not the most amazing game. Obviously, they were kind of going for something more grounded and a little different from Uncharted. I don't think it's like terrible the way it handles, but it definitely, everything about this game comes secondary to the story and the characters. It definitely has some of those old school typical mechanics of, you know, crafting stuff and finding supplies, and your supplies are low and you have to hold on to your ammo, and there's, you know, stealth sections. And playing this game for the first time, you know, we got the opening, we got the giraffe scene, we got the end of summer with Sam and Henry, we got David, which when we saw the credits and we see fucking Nolan North played David, we were like, holy shit, what? The ending of the game, everything about this, this is one of those games where we've talked a lot about either story games or games that like we have those fond memories. This game is one of those where I think back to my first reactions to every single moment and being like, this is like, it's so memorable. There's so many little details. Again, from a gameplay perspective, going back, there's definitely some goofy stuff that's definitely a game. And when we were talking about the show, there's a lot of things where I go back and go, yes, the palette stuff was just made for kind of getting you to another sequence. It's there to just waste time. Random action sequences, like the time where you're going to get Ellie at the house, you get ambushed, and then when you get to her, the house gets ambushed. Like those scenes were so irrelevant, but it's clearly it's a video game. We got to put in video game stuff. But I don't know. I still think the gameplay was still solid. It was, again, it's not like, this is not one of those amazing third-person shooters. I talked about Spec Ops: The Line last year a little bit, where again, it's one of those, it is what it is. But that's not the point. It's the story and the characters, and Joel and Ellie and every other supporting character in this game is bar none. I talked about another game last year where it was the beginning of my emotional connection to games. Not like loving a game, but just having that like story and emotions. Yeah. This was the next one. Like this was this game is just phenomenal, and the pacing of it I think is fantastic. The Left Behind DLC is fantastic. Again, I wish all the shit in the present was not even in it. I wish it was just kind of that fun little part in the mall. Again, I understand why they couldn't do that because they have to add it, but I don't know. This game is just one of those ones where I could talk forever. It's hard when your game of the year is a game that like you feel like everyone knows about, and especially in this day and age, it's been reported, like dash ported to many consoles, almost as much as fucking Grand Theft Auto 5, as much as Grand Theft Auto 5, because this came out the same year. We got a remaster, we got a light remaster, and then we got an actual rebuild of the game. And then with the show being out, this game is just like a huge thing in pop culture now. But I thought the whole idea of the cordyceps was interesting, the different kinds of enemies with that, the normal infected, the clickers. Obviously you fight normal people as well, like ravagers and whatnot. I will say, we were talking about how in Uncharted 2 there's that weird disconnect of like, yeah, woo woo woo, going to get a treasure, die, die, die. This game, you feel every hit. Like, you feel like a terrible person when you're killing these people. Like, you feel the darkness and the weight to every 2x4 hit, every fucking gunshot, like every shiv, you feel the impact, and just it's so dark and it's so brutal. And for Naughty Dog to kind of transition into this was crazy, because they were known for Uncharted, and then before that, all obviously Crash and Jack and Daxter. So there's that level of magnitude where they're great at doing games. But this game, obviously Amy took over Uncharted 3, Neil and company went to start The Last of Us, and this game at the time was super impactful, and even from a gameplay writing perspective, because BioShock is definitely a huge grand game. Grand Theft Auto 5 is a fantastic game, but it's it's sprawling, it's open world. This is that like focused, condensed 10 to 12 hour story. Again, I think all the stuff involved in it is great. Me replaying it for Jade was so much fun, being able to kind of see all the little different things in there. I don't really know what else to say about this game. I feel like it's just one of those games where you can watch any video on it, and anything that's been said has been said to death. Bill's Town, which if you've never played the game and you watch the show, definitely get the game, because Bill's Town, in my opinion, is one of the big different things that I think is fantastic and fun. The character in the game is very different than the Nick Offerman version, and in better ways, good ways, bad way, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, The Last of Us.
Well, The Last of Us, yes, Last of Us. See, Last of Us is my runner-up. I think it is a genuinely great game. I don't love it as much as Brian.
For I think
Sorry.
reasons that I give it a pass, I think are reasons that you don't like it, I would assume, right?
Honest, the gameplay is not like my forte. I think it's a little wonky, a little clunky. Hello, Maylene.
The fact that they have to design Ellie, like they said in interviews, they said either A, she gets you caught, or B, and you get pissed off, or B, the guys see Ellie, but it's okay because you don't want her to fuck you over AI wise.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes the AI can get a little bit wonky with it. When the story hits, it really fucking hits. And when the story doesn't hit, it really just is like, okay, this is fine. This is my favorite thing in the world, but you're like, eh. Um, there's very much somber moments and things like that. You're like, okay, cool. One thing you didn't really mention, and was a thing for the original release, they did have multiplayer. And now we're getting a whole fucking multiplayer game, I guess. Neil, calm down. Yeah, let's talk about a little bit about the legacy of The Last of Us. We talked about it a little bit with the ports. Of course, Last of Us 2, we haven't played personally, but coming from living in the gaming space, not many people are fans of.
No.
As much as the media will tell you it's an amazing game and game of the year for that year and things like that. Not many people like that game. From choices that are made, from character decisions, from gameplay perspectives. And also the Naughty Dog just trying to fully go down this Last of Us route of pretty much the last 10 years has only been Last of Us. Like they did Uncharted 4 in the middle of that, but like did they really? Everyone forgets Uncharted 4 was a thing. Let's be real. It kind of just flew by the wind.
Which is kind of unfortunate because Uncharted 4 is like pretty slap, like to be honest. But it's fine. We don't have to keep shitting on your runner up in the studio.
No,
let's talk ill about another company that went under because of your
So funny enough, this is another 2011 situation. 2 years later, we're back to this rundown. His runner-up here, it's BioShock Infinite. We'll talk about company problems now. Hey,
Ken Levine, we still love you. We're excited for this, and we wish this didn't happen, but hey.
Well, it could, BioShock released back 2007, fucking mind-blowing, They finished development on BioShock. It goes out, big reception. People love it. People are giving it all this praise. Ken Levine's like, all right, I got an idea for a second one. Let's get to work. We get first glimpse of BioShock Infinite in 2010 with just a small little trailer. It starts off with playing that nice, glorious, like Rapture music, and you see the city, and then they pull the person out of the fish tank and throw him out the window, and he's in the Sky Village. You're like, what the fuck? We're in the sky. You're what? And then you see your characters trying to reach out for this girl, and you're like, what's going on? And then just cut BioShock Infinite. You're like, what does this mean? Because we had just gotten BioShock 2, stayed in Rapture, whatever. Now we're not even anywhere near Rapture. They said, goodbye. We're going up. We're going to go hang out with Jesus. And they kind of did. The city of Columbia, based around the idea of the founding fathers, like those original 1776 staples. This is what America was. Very much, this is very much more in the sense of the political structure instead of like the original BioShock, where BioShock was like, let's get away from all that shit, let's not worry about politics or all this other crap, the world and things like that. Let's just live in a city where you are your own person in a sense, but in reality you never were. That's the point of BioShock. You never really were your own person. You were always under someone in a sense, but you had to become your own person in the end based on things like that. In this game, it's not really about discovering yourself and the things like that. You play as Booker DeWitt, voiced by illustrious, already talked about person on this Game of the Year cast list, Troy Baker. Handsome man, minimum person. He's lovely, very tall, and you're going out to find this girl, Elizabeth, played by Courtney Draper. A lot of people, will talk about the two companions of Troy Baker this year, Ellie and Elizabeth, and again, stronger feeling. I think Elizabeth is better as a character than Ellie. Mainly because there's more complexities to Elizabeth than there is to Ellie, I should say.
Yeah.
Not saying Ellie doesn't have complexities.
Well,
of course you have a whole.
The Last of Us feels like it is a game about Joel and his character arc, but you're learning things about Ellie, where this game, let's be honest, it really is all about Elizabeth. And Booker, you kind of learn stuff, but it really is like Elizabeth front and center, all the crazy shit that's happening with her.
Well, you're trying to get Elizabeth. It's get us the girl and wipe away the debt. That's this whole thing. And you're coming to learn about her. She's got this ability to tear rifts into other dimensions. the first rift we see, the introduction of Elizabeth is one of my favorite scenes ever because you just learn all about her character very easily just by watching her in her tower. She opens up a rift. It goes to Paris. It's in the 80s because they're playing Everybody Wants to Rule the World. And it's the year Return of the Jedi came out, but instead of Return of the Jedi, it's Revenge of the Jedi. And it's in, French because this is the universe that it was Revenge of the Jedi released and not Return. It's small little details like that we love. But, you get to see her, how she interacts with the environment. She's very much a reader. She's an avid thinker. She wants to go through the world. Then you tear that character apart because of you as Booker DeWitt and your illusion of choice. I talked about this a little bit last year with certain games based around choice. And, it is BioShock. BioShock, again, the theme of BioShock is this small illusion of choice. It's the idea of Booker has a choice to, what to do with Elizabeth. Does he go away with this deal? Does he do this stuff? Where in the reality of it, Booker had a choice at the beginning of the game, which caused, the events of Infinite to happen. I don't really want to go into too much details because I do think that twist is not as strong as, the twist in BioShock, the original BioShock. But BioShock is that series where I do like the twists are actually really strong with what they do. And the twist, what they do with Elizabeth and Booker's character and why everything is the way that it is, it's pretty fucked up. And you're very like, oh, this actually kind of makes sense. The Andrew Ryan of this world, Comstock, is a very interesting character, but he doesn't have that presence that Andrew Ryan does, which is unfortunate. But I do think he is strong in his own sense. It's very interesting that this man, built a whole utopia in the sky. And, how he wanted the U.S. government involved with it, but the U.S. government was like, this is just too fucking nuts. So he like separated from the United States. Also, the idea that he took, Elizabeth's riffs and stole things from time. I love going when you're first on the world and you go up to that one little floating panel and it's the barbershop and they're singing that Beach Boys song and you're like, huh? And then you hear girls just want to have fun somewhere later on like the Paradise Pier area. And you're like, wait a minute, hold on a second. The world is just so interesting. There's elements of Columbia that are very much stronger than in a world like Rapture. Where I do think Rapture, I do enjoy my time in Rapture more than I do in Columbia. I do enjoy my stay. It is, being in the sky and having that sun beat down on you and seeing the world in a different perspective than it's just the underwater darky aspects, it's interesting and I like that. But let's go back a little bit to development funds. Go back to 2011, the first ever full-on presentation of BioShock Infinite. And everyone said, what the fuck is this? This looks awesome. It was this whole introduction. You come up, you see this politician is, Raven and trying to get people to vote for him in Colombia. You pick up a gun and he just gets this rabbit eyes. And then the city just starts morphing and tearing itself apart. Like something is clearly corrupting it and things like that. And then you find Elizabeth with all these rift abilities and things like that. You're using your electrical stuff, your, vigors, as they're called in this game, because, they can't be plasmids because it's different universe. But that's something I can get into a little bit later. I have a small little tangent at the end here I'll go into. We see this gameplay demo and we're like, holy fucking shit. And it was supposed to come out in early 2012. We were like, oh shit, this is close. And then it kept getting pushed back and kept getting pushed back. And we were seeing less and less and hearing less and less. And then it came back the year later, E3, but it looked different. It didn't feel the same. And I think people noticed that very well. And I think, again, we love you, Ken Levine, but we knew that Ken Levine's ambitions were very huge for this game. And everyone's expectations were very huge from this game. Again, it was at this point, it'd be 6 years nearly since that original Bioshock dropped. And we're like, what story do you have to tell? And what new gameplay elements do you have? And again, I'm not saying every game is perfect. I love, you know, pretty much all my game of the years, I have a special and fond appreciation for and things like that. And Bioshock Infinite for sure is more so. I love its story, its characters, the engulfment of this world of Columbia and things like that. Where it does a little bit fall apart for me is in the gameplay development, because I feel like it just took Bioshock 1's gameplay and just did it again, but also made it a little bit worse because it limits you to 2 guns. It limits you to having a strict set of plasmids at a time. Or vigors, excuse me. It's enemies that kept coming out. They kept announcing all these different types of enemies. The Patriot like dudes, the big like George Washington machines. You don't really fight them that much. They were making this like a big deal because we wanted like the aspect of the Big Daddy. We didn't really get that from them.
Well,
they had these.
I was gonna say the other big thing that you brought that brings up something too is this game was definitely like BioShock, unlike Fallout. BioShock, the gunplay, it wasn't like terrible, but it clearly was like, this is not the big strong part, right? Fallout, this is not what it is. BioShock was fine. He was trying to really be like, we're gonna make like a first-person shooter. Like he wanted the mechanics to feel a lot more fluid in that way. And I think there's definitely aspects of it that feel really nice and strong, but then there's other things where I think it's taking a step back of, no, like this is not like this is not what you're known for, like it's fine if the gameplay is like
problem with the game, because when I remember when they were fully getting ready for release and things like that, they had announced the cover of the box, and it was just Booker holding a gun with an explosion in the background.
Yeah,
that's not what the game's about whatsoever. And people were pissed because, of course, Irrational's idea was, we get it, that's not what our game's about, but we know what sells. And a lot of people are just like, this is a guy with a gun on a cover, I'll pick it up. And they were really trying to, the problem was they were trying to pull that mainstream market as well as the people that game. And that's not what it was about. That reversible cover with Elizabeth and Songbird, excellent. It shouldn't have been the cover, but I did like that reversible cover. Definitely Elizabeth needed to be on the cover. I don't ever understand why Elizabeth was never on the cover and things like that, but here we are. Going back to positive aspects though of BioShock, I felt it's perfectly paced. It's a solid good 10-12 hours right there, going back to what we needed in games from this time. Not a lot of games just give you like, here's your 10 to 12 hours, that's it, we're all set. I never felt bored during it. I was always going through and felt like the story was progressing to where it needed to go. I felt like interesting things were going on. I liked the different vigors that they introduced. That crow one was a huge deal. When they showed it off, you're like, it's a freaking crow. The different types of guns they had. I like the skyhook thing. It was silly. I like silly in my fucking too serious games. Because the footage that's playing right now, there's a whole thing where they're falling from the sky, and then Booker just is falling, and he sees the sky rail, and he just has the hook, and he just latches on and perfectly, and you're like, this doesn't make sense, but who cares? It's fun. I like the aspect of Songbird. I felt like they should have done more with it. They definitely, show off more Songbird towards the end, but But I feel like BioShock Infinite as a full package compared to something like The Last of Us is why I do prefer it as my game of the year. Again, I think I like the characters more than I do in something like The Last of Us, because I don't hate because there's aspects where at times I'm like, I kind of hate Joel as a character, which I get is the point. You're not supposed to love Joel. That's the idea. You're not supposed to love Joel. But like Booker, I think is a very interesting character and what they do with him. Elizabeth, outstanding as the character. The AI for Elizabeth as well is very good. I don't think it's amazing. A lot of people like to think that Elizabeth's AI is like astounding. Don't you 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100. I just think what when you walk into a room and her deciding what she wants to do in the room, I do think is really cool. But then there's other times that she just is there just to throw you things. Here's some
Hey,
yeah, that's it. Like, okay. But her exploring and like having this unique dialogue and talking about the world, awesome. That's why I loved going through it because like every time you would walk through with her and her character progression of, she's just this girl who lives in this tower and she's like, gets to go into this open world and discover what it's like just to realize that the world sucks. Man, welcome to reality, Elizabeth. Isn't it great? Before I finish off, I want to just talk about my little bit of a gripe. So, of course, the game didn't really do financially well at the beginning of its run, mainly because, again, people were expecting one game and they didn't really get it. And of course, it is what it is. False marketing is a strong thing that happens in the video game industry. And I don't think that's not what Bioshock Infinite's intention was. It's just that their ambitions were so goddamn high that it didn't turn out for the product. That's not my gripe. My gripe is the DLC. Okay, Clash of the Clouds is one of the worst things that's ever come out. They said, we're just going to release a wave-based fucking thing. Ugh, that's not what we needed. Really not what we needed. Then we get to Burial at Sea. But let's talk about this. Okay, so they said, they wanted to do DLC, to expand more of the world. In reality, they just wanted to do it so they could make Bioshock Rapture in its current engine. Because the new engine they use for Bioshock Infinite is really good. And Rapture looks stunning in Burial at Sea. The plot at Burial at Sea is awful and retcons so much garbage not garbage, but retcons so much stuff from the original Bioshock and Bioshock Infinite that I honestly strongly recommend you don't play it if you are very much into the lore of Bioshock and Bioshock Infinite, because it lessens the world of Rapture and it lessens the world of Columbia at the same time. Columbia and Rapture should not be coinciding with each other whatsoever. There should be no reason that these two worlds, and I'm not saying that because, Booker's a character in it and Elizabeth's a character in it. No, that's not what I'm saying. They literally have characters from Columbia and Rapture interact with each other. I don't care that I'm spoiling this garbage because it's garbage. It's garbage. This idea that, their worlds are what makes certain things in their worlds happen, stupid. It's just like, I don't know what they were thinking with it. They just really said, we want to get that player. We just want people to come back to Infinite and do things, and it just doesn't work. Especially with part 2, because part 1's fine. You get this nice little view of Rapture before New Year's Eve strikes, and you get to actually understand that not everything in Rapture was perfect. Their underbelly was shucky and things like that. Atlas was slowly building and things like that. Part 2, that's where they throw it out the fucking window. They throw it out the fucking window, and they said, we're just gonna go nuts. We're gonna make things just so that events in Bioshock can make sense for when they happen. You leave good things alone. I don't think Bioshock Infinite's perfect, of course, but there's so much that I do love about it, and there's so much that I just like discussing about it, that when I think of something like Burial at Sea, where it just tarnishes it, it's just like, and that's the last thing that you do for Bioshock as well is, all right, we're just gonna have Elizabeth die technically in Rapture, so she can't even use her abilities that is a whole that would be a whole awesome gameplay perspective, first of all. And secondly, it screws her as a character.
Well, like we've had the conversations about how auteurs in video games work very differently than like movies, where again, we've already joked so fucking much about Oppenheimer over like so many videos recently, but like that is an example of movies still kind of being able to have that, and then the rest of the industry where really Tim Schafer had like it's his company. It's not like with 2K where 2K and Irrational and like it was like 2K Boston for BioShock, but then they gave them Irrational Games back. And in that situation, you could tell like Ken was trying to do Ken, but 2K was also like they're trying to like force a certain thing on them. And I'm excited for them for Ghost Story Games because it sounds like we're going to be able to just have Ken be Ken without all the BS.
And you know what they say? He is Ken enough.
He is Ken enough. There we go. See, now we have Barbie involved in all of these videos. But no, this was, like I said, this is a solid year. And honestly, shout out GTA 5. I know I'm more into the Grand Theft Auto games than Erik is, but GTA 5 was awesome.
It was a good time. Definitely
GTA 5 was a good time. I was just excited when this game came out.
Out of all the games, let's be real, GTA 5 is the one game you would go back to out of all three of these games.
That is true. Like when I heard the anticipation and they said, remember that really fun bank robbing mission in GTA 4? That's the game. I was like, what? And then like the whole changing between three different characters, and we're not going to ramble on about GTA 5. That's not our game of the years, but shout out to GTA 5 because that game also is the biggest thing in entertainment history, and it's on 70 fucking consoles. So
before we go off, who is winning a guitar battle, Joel or Booker?
Well, if we're going off of or actually Joel Booker, the answer is actually just Troy Baker in the after credits scene of BioShock where they're in the studio playing. It's him. I feel a monkey wrench.
I also can't forget that freaking Infinite's the game where it's the only game with Courtney Draper where Ken made her cry.
That is true. This year was a great year for video games. Again, this was a more three pillars and then everything else. Like there was definitely three games that everyone flocked to and then everything else. And we picked two of them.
How original?
How original. Is it one of your game of the years too? If not, leave it in the comments below. Like, comments, subscribe. It's been fun. It's been fun while it's lasted because
we're going to the dark ages, baby. The new console generation's upon us. And with every new console generation, it's never really a good first year, I'm gonna be honest.
So we hope you enjoyed the golden years. We're gonna have some pretty solid years after this, though. Like, I'm not saying like it's done and it's over
or anything. No, that's not the problem.
But
the selection is not the greatest.
Yeah, we're gonna start hitting some rough years for a little bit. So but yeah, check out our other game of the year casts. Check out, all of our golden years. The golden years have been going now for like 8-9 years. So check all of them out. And we still gotta get to Erik's favorite game of all time. It's gonna happen at some point. So until next time, toodaloo.
Toodaloo.